The cargo ship Carolina Dawn drifted through the darkness between stars. Her hull was old and covered with patches from years of repairs. She was not a pretty ship, but she was strong, and she had kept her crew alive through many hard years. Jack Turner sat in the pilot's seat and watched the empty space ahead. He was 42 years old, with gray showing in his short brown hair. His face was hard and lined from years of work and war. His hands rested on the controls, thick and scarred from a lifetime of labor. Behind him, Amy Grant worked on a broken power coupling. She was younger than Jack by 7 years, with red hair tied back and grease on her fingers. She had been with him for 5 years now, ever since the day he pulled her from the burning wreckage of Colony 7. "We have 3 days of fuel left," Amy said without looking up. "The refugees on Shelter Station need medicine more than they need us showing up empty." Jack nodded slowly. "We will find something. We always do." The ship was quiet except for the hum of the old engines. They had been running supplies to hidden human settlements for 2 years now, ever since the Dominion Empire declared humanity a threat to galactic peace. It was dangerous work. Dominion patrols shot human ships on sight. But someone had to do it. Amy finished her repair and walked to the co-pilot's seat. She dropped into it and looked at the navigation screen. "There is a signal coming in. Dominion broadcast, open channel." Jack frowned. The Dominion rarely used open channels. They preferred to keep their business private, away from the lesser species they ruled. "Put it through," he said. The screen flickered and then a face appeared. It was reptilian, with green scales and golden eyes that held no warmth. Jack recognized him immediately. Every human knew that face. Emperor Varth Cal. The Emperor stood on a platform of white stone, surrounded by guards in golden armor. Behind him, the towers of the imperial capital reached toward a purple sky. He spoke in a voice that was smooth and cold. "Citizens of the Dominion, I bring news of mercy. The human problem has troubled our great civilization for too long. Their violence, their wars, their inability to live in peace, these things threaten all we have built. But we are not cruel. We do not seek to destroy them." Jack's hands tightened on the armrests of his chair. "Today, I announce that humanity will be granted protected species status. They will be relocated to reservation worlds where they can live safely, away from civilized space. They will surrender their ships, their weapons, and their colonies. In return, we will allow them to survive. This is our gift to them." The Emperor smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "The Galactic Senate will vote on this measure in 3 days. I have no doubt they will see the wisdom of this choice. The human era in space is over. Let them accept this truth with grace." The broadcast ended. Amy stared at the blank screen. Her face had gone pale. "Protected species status. They are putting us in cages." Jack said nothing. He was thinking of another broadcast 3 years ago. The Dominion had called it a pacification mission. They said the colonists of Riverside had been stockpiling weapons. They said it was necessary. Jack had been on that colony. He had watched the Dominion ships descend. He had heard the screams. He had held his daughter Lily in his arms as she died. She was 8 years old. A piece of shrapnel had torn through her chest. There was nothing he could do. She had looked up at him with confused eyes and asked why it hurt so much. And then she was gone. Jack closed his eyes and saw her face. He saw her smile, the gap where she had lost her first tooth. He saw her running through the fields of the colony, laughing at something he could not remember. "Jack," Amy's voice was soft. "Are you all right?" He opened his eyes. "They are going to vote in 3 days. Do we have anyone in the Senate? Anyone to speak for us?" Amy shook her head. "You know, we do not. Humanity lost its Senate seat after the war. We have no voice there. Then I will go." Amy stared at him. "What? Someone has to speak for us. Someone has to stand in that chamber and tell them who we really are. Jack, that is insane. The capital is the most heavily guarded place in the galaxy. You would never even get through the door. He stood up and walked to the navigation console. His fingers moved across the controls, plotting a new course. I spent 15 years in the military before I became a hauler. I have been in worse places than the Dominion Senate. This is different. This is suicide. Jack turned to look at her. His eyes were calm, but there was something burning deep behind them. Lily died because no one stood up. The colonies burned because no one said stop. I am done hiding, Amy. I am done running cargo while they decide our future without us. Amy was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood up and walked to stand beside him. Fine, but I am not letting you go alone. I will keep the ship ready. When this goes wrong, and it will go wrong, you are going to need a fast exit. Jack almost smiled. You always did have more faith in my plans than me. Someone has to. He finished the course calculations and locked them in. The Carolina Dawn turned toward the heart of the Dominion, toward the world of Thesser Prime, where the Senate gathered. 3 days. He had 3 days to cross half the galaxy and find a way into the most secure building ever built. 3 days to stand before the powers that ruled 1,000 worlds and demand they listen to a single human voice. It was impossible. He knew that, but Jack Turner had stopped believing in impossible the day his daughter died in his arms. The universe had shown him its worst. It had taken everything from him. And he was still standing. The stars streaked past as the ship jumped to faster than light speed. Somewhere ahead, an emperor sat on his throne and smiled. Believing that humanity was already beaten. He was wrong. Jack looked out at the rushing lights of the jump and thought of all the humans hiding in the dark places of the galaxy. The refugees. The survivors. The children who had never known a home that was not running. They deserved better. They deserved a voice, and if no one else would give them one, then Jack Turner would drag it out of the galaxy himself. Amy sat back in her chair and began running system checks. You know, she said quietly, even if you get in, even if you speak, they will not listen. We are just humans to them, animals. Jack nodded. Then I will make them listen. How? He did not answer. He was watching the stars, and his mind was already 3 days ahead. Standing in a chamber full of enemies, searching for the one move that could change everything, the Carolina Dawn flew on through the darkness, carrying one man and his impossible mission toward a galaxy that did not know he was coming. Thesser Prime was a world of white towers and endless light. The Dominion had built their capital here 10,000 years ago, and every century since they had made it grander. The Senate building alone was larger than most cities. Its spires reached so high they seemed to touch the clouds. Jack Turner walked through the crowded streets, with his head down and his hands in his pockets. He wore the clothes of a merchant, simple and forgettable. His ship was docked in a civilian port on the far side of the city, with Amy running silent and ready to fly at a moment's notice. The streets were full of species Jack had never seen before. Tall creatures with 4 arms. Small ones that floated instead of walked. Beings of crystal and shadow and colors that hurt to look at. They moved past him without a glance. To them, he was just another forgettable face in the crowd. Good. That was what he needed. He had spent 2 days studying the Senate building, learning its patterns and its weaknesses. The main entrances were impossible. Hundreds of guards watched every door. But the servants' entrances were different. Workers came and went all day, bringing food and cleaning supplies and all the small things that kept the great machine running. Jack had found a uniform in a storage room. It fit poorly, but no one looked closely at servants. He was counting on that. The sun was setting when he reached the service entrance. Two guards stood by the door, checking identification cards. Jack's heart beat steady and slow. He had done this before, in other wars, on other worlds. Fear was just another feeling. He pushed it aside and walked forward. "Card," the guard said. It was a creature with blue skin and too many eyes. Jack handed over the stolen card. The guard looked at it, then at Jack, then back at the card. "You are new. Started last week," Jack said. "Kitchen duty." The guard made a sound that might have been a grunt of acceptance. It waved him through. Jack walked into the Senate building and did not look back. The inside was even more impressive than the outside. The halls were wide enough for giants to walk side by side. The walls were covered with screens showing news and debates and the faces of important beings. Everything was clean and bright and designed to make visitors feel small. Jack followed signs toward the main chamber. He passed through kitchens where cooks prepared food for 100 different species. He walked past storage rooms and offices and places where guards stood watching everything. No one stopped him. No one asked questions. He was invisible. The main chamber was at the heart of the building. Jack found a service corridor that led to a gallery above the floor. It was meant for workers to watch the proceedings without being seen. He climbed the narrow stairs and found a spot in the shadows where he could see everything. The chamber below took his breath away. It was vast beyond imagining. Thousands of seats rose in circles around the central platform. Each seat held a representative of a different species, a different world. They talked and argued and made deals that decided the fate of billions. And there, on the central platform, stood Emperor Varth Kell. He was even larger in person than he appeared on screens. His scales gleamed under the lights, and his golden robes flowed around him like liquid. When he spoke, his voice filled every corner of the chamber. "My fellow citizens of the Dominion, we gather today to discuss a matter of great importance. The human question." Behind the Emperor, a massive screen flickered to life. Images appeared. Cities burning. Soldiers fighting. Explosions and death and destruction. "This is humanity," the Emperor said. "This is what they do. They cannot help themselves. Violence is in their nature." Jack watched the screen. He recognized some of the footage. The wars of old Earth, the conflicts that humans had fought against each other before they reached the stars. The images were real, but they were not the whole truth. They came to the stars and brought their violence with them, the Emperor continued. They attacked peaceful colonies. They refused to follow our laws. When we tried to guide them, they called it oppression. When we defended ourselves, they called it murder. More images. Human ships firing on Dominion vessels. Human soldiers raising weapons. Jack knew those images too. He knew what had happened before the cameras started recording. The Dominion ships had fired first. The human soldiers had been defending their homes, but no one showed that part. "We have been patient," the Emperor said. "We have offered peace again and again. And what do the humans give us in return? Only more violence. Only more death. It is time to accept the truth. Humanity cannot be trusted with freedom." The chamber was quiet. Jack looked at the thousands of faces below. Some looked uncomfortable. Some looked bored. But none of them spoke up. None of them challenged the Emperor's words. In the front row, Jack noticed one figure who was different. It was a tall being with silver skin and large dark eyes. While others nodded along with the Emperor, this one sat very still, watching with an expression that might have been doubt. The being's eyes moved, scanning the chamber. For a moment, they seemed to look directly at the gallery where Jack was hiding. Jack held his breath. The being looked away. "Tomorrow," the Emperor said, "we will vote on the Protection Act. I urge all of you to support it. Let us show the galaxy that the Dominion knows mercy. Let us give humanity the peace they cannot find themselves. The chamber filled with applause. The Emperor smiled and raised his hands in acceptance. Jack stayed in the shadows until the session ended and the representatives filed out. He stayed until the cleaning crews came and went. He stayed until the great chamber was empty and dark. Then he climbed down from the gallery and walked onto the Senate floor. He stood on the central platform where the Emperor had stood. He looked up at the thousands of empty seats. Tomorrow they would all be full. Tomorrow they would vote to put humanity in chains and call it kindness. Jack thought about his daughter. He thought about the colonies that had burned. He thought about all the humans hiding in the dark, waiting for a future that seemed to grow smaller every day. Words would not save them. He knew that now. He had watched the Senate listen to lies and nod along. They did not want to hear the truth. They wanted to feel good about what they were doing. Jack needed something bigger. He needed something they could not ignore. He walked to the edge of the platform and looked at the great seal of the Dominion carved into the floor. It showed a galaxy held in a clawed hand, the symbol of imperial power. His hand moved to his pocket. He felt the small device there, the one he had brought from the ship. Not a weapon. Something else? He had one chance. One moment to change everything. Jack Turner stood alone in the empty chamber and made his plan. When the sun rose and the Senate gathered, he would be ready. He would step out of the shadows and demand what no human had been allowed to demand for years. The right to speak. And if they would not give it, he would take it. He looked up at the place where the Emperor had stood and smiled a smile that held no warmth. "See you tomorrow," he said to the empty room. Then he walked back into the shadows and disappeared. The morning sun filled the Senate chamber with golden light. Every seat was full. Representatives from 2,000 worlds had gathered to vote on the fate of humanity. Cameras floated through the air, broadcasting the event to every corner of the galaxy. Emperor Vareth Kell stood on the central platform in robes of pure white. He looked out at the assembly with satisfaction. This was his moment. After years of work, he would finally solve the human problem. "My friends," he began, "today we make history. Today we bring order to chaos. Today we show the galaxy that the Dominion is strong enough to be merciful." The representatives applauded. "I call for the vote on the Human Protection Act. All in favor? Please signal now." Lights began to flicker across the chamber as representatives cast their votes. Green for yes, red for no. The greens outnumbered the reds by far, and then a voice cut through the chamber. "I challenge." Every head turned. The cameras swung toward a figure walking down the central aisle. He wore simple clothes, worn and patched. His face was hard and weathered. His eyes were fixed on the Emperor. Jack Turner walked toward the platform without fear, without hesitation, as if he had every right to be there. Guards rushed forward, weapons raised. But Jack kept walking. "I challenge," he said again, louder now. "Under the ancient law, the right of challenge." The chamber erupted in noise. Representatives shouted questions. Guards surrounded Jack with weapons pointed at his chest. Emperor Vareth Kell raised one clawed hand, and the room fell silent. "What is this?" His voice was cold with anger. "A human? In my Senate?" Jack stopped at the edge of the platform. He looked up at the Emperor without flinching. "My name is Jack Turner. I am a citizen of humanity, and I invoke the right of challenge." Whispers spread through the chamber. Most of the representatives looked confused. But in the front row, the silver-skinned being that Jack had noticed the day before leaned forward with sudden interest. "The right of challenge," the being said, standing slowly. "An ancient tradition. Perhaps the oldest in this chamber." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "Senator Lyris, you know this law?" "I do." Senator Lyris spoke clearly so all could hear. "It was written in the first days of the Dominion, when our ancestors still settled disputes with strength rather than words. Any being may challenge a ruling species to prove their worth through single combat. If the challenger wins, they earn the right to speak before this body. The law has never been removed, because no one has been fool enough to invoke it in 1,000 years, the Emperor said. The law still stands. The chamber was silent. All eyes moved between the senator, the Emperor, and a small human standing alone among the guards. Emperor HFY stepped to the edge of the platform and looked down at Jack. He was twice the human's height. His scales were thick as armor. His claws could tear through metal. "You wish to fight me, little human?" Jack met his gaze. "I do. Do you understand what that means? There are no rules in the right of challenge. No mercy, no surrender. One of us will die. I understand." The Emperor laughed. It was a cold sound that echoed through the chamber. This is what humanity sends. One man against an emperor? Against the ruler of 1,000 worlds? He spread his arms wide, addressing the assembly. "Look at this creature. This is the species that thinks it deserves freedom. They cannot even protect themselves." Some of the representatives laughed along with him. Jack stood still and waited. The Emperor's laughter faded. He looked at Jack again, studying him with new attention. "You know you cannot win," he said quietly, so only Jack could hear. "I know," Jack replied. "Then why?" "Because someone has to stand. Because my people deserve a voice. Because I would rather die on my feet than watch us fade away in silence." Something flickered in the Emperor's eyes. Interest, perhaps. Or amusement. Very well. He raised his voice to fill the chamber. "I accept the challenge. Let the galaxy watch as I show them what happens to those who defy the Dominion." The guards pulled back. The representatives scrambled to clear the floor. Cameras adjusted their angles, making sure they would capture every moment. Jack climbed onto the platform. He removed his jacket and let it fall. Beneath it, his arms were bare, showing scars that told stories of old battles. The Emperor removed his robes, revealing the massive body beneath. His scales covered him like natural armor. His muscles were dense and powerful. He flexed his claws, each one longer than Jack's hand. "Any last words, human?" Jack rolled his shoulders and settled into a fighting stance. His hands were open, his weight balanced. "You asked what weapons humans have," he said. "I will show you." He raised his hands. "Our hands. These built cities, healed the sick, created art and music and love." He pointed to his heart. "Our will. We have been beaten and burned and broken, but we keep standing. We always keep standing." He met the Emperor's eyes. "And our refusal to kneel. You can kill me today, but you cannot kill that. You cannot kill what we are." The chamber was utterly silent. 1,000,000,000,000 beings across the galaxy watched their screens and held their breath. Senator Lyris stood at the edge of the cleared space, watching with dark eyes that held something like hope. Emperor HFY crouched low, ready to spring. "Brave words," he said. "Let us see if you can back them up." Jack said nothing. His eyes tracked the Emperor's movements, reading the tiny shifts of weight, the tension in his muscles. A bell chimed somewhere, marking the start of the challenge. The Emperor moved like lightning, crossing the space between them in a single leap. His claws slashed through the air where Jack's head had been a moment before. But Jack was not there. He had dropped low and rolled, coming up behind the Emperor, landing one solid punch to the back of the Emperor's knee. It was like hitting stone. But Jack felt the joint shift slightly. The Emperor spun with a roar, his tail sweeping low. Jack jumped, barely clearing it, and landed off balance. A claw caught his shoulder, tearing through skin and muscle. Blood splashed across the white platform. Jack stumbled, but did not fall. He pressed one hand against the wound and kept his eyes on his enemy. The galaxy watched, and the fight continued. Blood dripped from Jack's shoulder onto the white stone. The wound burned, but he pushed the pain aside. Pain was just information. It told him he was still alive. Emperor Varth Kell circled him slowly, golden eyes bright with hunger. The first strike had been a test. Now the Emperor knew how fast the human could move. "You are quicker than I expected," the Emperor admitted. "But speed will not save you. Nothing will save you." He lunged again, claws reaching for Jack's throat. Jack dropped and rolled, but the Emperor was faster this time. A claw caught his side, opening a second wound. Jack gasped and kept moving, putting distance between them. The representatives watched in silence. Some had expected this to be over quickly. Minutes had passed, and the human was still standing. Jack circled right, keeping his wounded side away from the Emperor. His military training ran through his mind. Every enemy had weaknesses. He just had to find them. The Emperor's strength came from his size. His scales were thick, but they were thickest on his chest and back. The joints were more vulnerable. The throat, the eyes, the soft places between the armor. Jack feinted left and moved right. The Emperor's claw missed by inches. Jack drove his fist into the Emperor's elbow joint with all his strength. The Emperor hissed in pain and swung his tail. It caught Jack across the chest and sent him flying. Jack hit the platform hard. Something cracked in his ribs. He rolled to his knees, blood running from his mouth. "Get up," he told himself. "Get up or die." He got up. The Emperor watched him with something like curiosity. "Why do you not stay down? You must know you cannot win." "I have lost before," Jack said, spitting blood. "Losing does not scare me anymore." He charged. The Emperor struck, but Jack was expecting it. He twisted at the last moment, letting the claw pass over his shoulder. He grabbed the Emperor's arm with both hands and used his momentum to swing himself up and onto the Emperor's back. The Emperor roared and tried to reach him, but Jack was already moving. He wrapped his arms around the Emperor's neck, locking his hands together, squeezing with everything he had. The Emperor thrashed. He slammed backward into the platform, crushing Jack beneath his weight. Jack felt his ribs break, felt the air driven from his lungs. But he did not let go. The Emperor reached back and grabbed Jack's arm. His claws dug into the flesh, tearing deep. Jack screamed but held on. They rolled across the platform, blood smearing the white stone. The Emperor's movements grew slower as Jack cut off the blood to his brain. But his claws kept tearing, kept cutting. Finally, the Emperor threw himself sideways and managed to grab Jack properly. He ripped the human free and hurled him across the platform. Jack hit the ground and lay still. The chamber held its breath. Emperor Varth Kell stood over the broken human, breathing hard. His scales were scratched. His arm hung slightly loose where Jack had struck the joint. A thin line of blood ran from beneath his jaw. "Is that all?" he demanded. "Is that the best humanity can offer?" Jack opened his eyes. Slowly, painfully, he pushed himself up. His arms shook. Blood ran down his face and chest. One eye was swelling shut. His ribs ground together with every breath. But he stood. The representatives made sounds of disbelief. Even Senator Lyris looked shocked. The Emperor stared at him. How are you still standing?" Jack coughed and steadied himself. "This is what we are. This is what you never understood. We do not stop. We do not give up. You can break our bodies. You can burn our worlds. But you cannot break our will." He raised his fists. "Come on then. Finish it." The Emperor roared and charged. What happened next took less than 3 seconds, but those watching would remember it forever. Jack did not try to block or dodge. He stepped forward into the attack. The Emperor's claw struck his chest, but Jack turned with the blow, using the force to spin himself. His elbow drove into the Emperor's throat. The Emperor choked and stumbled. Jack dropped low, grabbed the Emperor's leg, and pulled with his last strength. The Emperor fell. Before he could recover, Jack was on him. He locked his arms around the Emperor's neck again, this time from the front. His legs wrapped around the Emperor's body, pinning his arms. The Emperor struggled, but his throat was damaged. His strength was fading. Jack squeezed harder, his broken body screaming in protest. "Yield," Jack said through bloody teeth. "Yield or die." The Emperor's eyes bulged. His claws scraped weakly at Jack's back. His struggles grew slower. Yield. A long moment passed. The galaxy watched. Then Emperor Marth Kell, ruler of 1,000 worlds, supreme commander of the Dominion, went limp and tapped the ground 3 times. The ancient sign of surrender. Jack released him and stood on shaking legs. The Emperor lay on his back, gasping for air, unable to rise. The chamber was utterly silent. Jack reached down and grabbed the Emperor's ceremonial collar, the heavy golden chain that marked his status. He pulled. The Emperor stumbled to his feet. Choking and confused, Jack pulled again, and the Emperor fell to his knees. Then, in front of every camera, in front of every representative, in front of the entire galaxy, Jack Turner dragged the Emperor of the Dominion across the Senate floor. He dragged him through the halls of power that had ruled over 1 trillion lives. He dragged him past the representatives who had voted to cage humanity. He dragged him to the central podium where the Great Seal of the Dominion was carved into the floor. And there, he forced the Emperor to kneel. Jack stood over him, covered in blood, barely able to stand. He looked up at the cameras, at the watching galaxy. "This is what happens when you silence a people," he said. His voice was rough and broken, but every word was clear. "We do not kneel. We do not disappear. We fight." He pointed at the representatives. "You were going to put us in cages and call it mercy. You were going to erase us and call it peace. But here I stand, one man against your empire. And your emperor is on his knees." He paused, breathing hard. "We are not animals. We are not a problem to be solved. We are human. And we will not be silent anymore." The chamber remained frozen. Then, slowly, Senator Lyris began to applaud. One by one, others joined. Not all, not even most, but enough. Jack looked down at the Emperor kneeling before him, the most powerful being in the galaxy, brought low by a single human who refused to give up. He let go of the collar and stepped back. "I have earned the right to speak," he said. "And tomorrow I will tell you who we really are." Then his legs gave out, and he collapsed. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was the face of the Emperor, staring at him with something that might have been fear, or respect, or both. Jack woke in a white room that smelled of medicine. Machines beeped softly around him. His body was wrapped in bandages, and tubes ran into his arms. Everything hurt, but it was a distant pain, dulled by whatever drugs were keeping him alive. Amy sat beside his bed. Her eyes were red from crying, but she smiled when she saw him wake. "You stupid, beautiful fool," she said quietly. "You actually did it." Jack tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. Amy held a cup of water to his lips and helped him drink. "How long?" he managed. 2 days. "They nearly lost you 3 times on the operating table. The doctor said they have never seen anyone take that much damage and survive." She shook her head, stubborn as always. Jack looked around the room. It was not a prison cell. The equipment was advanced, the sheets were clean, and armed guards were nowhere to be seen. Where are we? Still on Lesser Prime. Senator Lyris arranged for you to be treated at the best medical facility in the capital. Apparently, you have friends now." Jack closed his eyes and remembered. The fight. The fall of the Emperor. The words he had spoken to the galaxy. "The vote," he said. "What happened?" Amy's smile grew wider. "They postponed it. The whole galaxy saw what you did. The broadcast broke every viewing record in history. They are calling you the man who humbled an empire." She took his hand. The Emperor was removed from power by his own council. They said he brought shame to the Dominion by losing to a single human. His own people turned on him. Can you believe that? Jack thought of the Emperor's face as he knelt on the Senate floor. No, he could believe it. Power based on strength could not survive a public display of weakness. And humanity? That is why Lyris wants to see you. As soon as you can walk. It took another day before Jack could stand. His body was a map of wounds held together by medical science and pure stubbornness. But he dressed himself in clean clothes that someone had provided, and he walked out of the medical center under his own power. Senator Lyris was waiting in a garden outside. The silver-skinned being stood among alien flowers, looking up at the towers of the Capitol. Jack Turner, Lyris said without turning. The man who changed the galaxy with his bare hands. Jack walked to stand beside the senator. I just did what had to be done. That is what makes it remarkable. So many saw what needed to be done. You were the only one who did it. Lyris finally turned to face him. You have earned the right to address the Senate. What will you say? Jack had thought about this during his days of healing. He had thought about anger, about demanding justice for all the humans who had died. He had thought about revenge, but that was not what his people needed. I will ask for freedom, he said. Nothing more. The right to our own worlds, our own ships, our own future. We will not seek revenge. We will not demand payment for what was done to us. We just want to be left alone to build our own path. Lyris was quiet for a long moment. Many on my council expect you to call for war. They are afraid of what humanity might become if given power. Then they do not understand us. Jack looked at the alien flowers, so different from anything on Earth. We have fought enough, killed enough, lost enough. All we want is a chance to prove we can be something better. 2 days later, Jack stood on the same platform where he had fought the Emperor. The chamber was full again, but the mood was different. Representatives watched him with curiosity instead of dismissal. Cameras broadcast his image to every corner of the galaxy. He spoke for 20 minutes. He talked about Earth and its long history of war, but also its music and art and love. He talked about the colonies that had been destroyed and the children who had died. He talked about the refugees hiding in the dark reaches of space, waiting for hope. And then he made his request. We ask only for freedom. The same freedom every other species in this chamber takes for granted. We will not threaten you. We will not attack you. We just want to live. He paused and looked around at the thousands of watching faces. You have seen what one human can do when pushed too far. Imagine what we could do as partners instead of prisoners. We could build together, explore together, face the darkness between the stars together. He spread his hands. Give us a chance. That is all I ask. The vote happened an hour later. It was not unanimous. Nothing ever was. But when the lights finished flickering, the greens outnumbered the reds by a margin that left no doubt. Humanity was free. The news spread across the galaxy in hours. Human ships emerged from hiding, some cheering, some crying. On hidden stations and refugee camps, people looked up at screens and wept with relief. Jack Turner returned to the Carolina Dawn, where Amy was waiting. You did it, she said. You actually did it. We did it, Jack corrected. Without you, I would never have made it off the planet. A signal came through the communication system. Jack answered it and saw a face he did not recognize. A human with gray hair and steady eyes wearing an old military uniform. Captain Turner. I am Admiral Ben Carter, commander of what is left of the human resistance fleet. I wanted to thank you personally. No thanks needed, Admiral. I just did what had to be done. That seems to be your specialty. The Admiral smiled. What are your plans now? Jack looked out the window at the stars. I think I would like to go home. See Earth again. Help rebuild what we lost. Earth will be glad to have you. The Admiral paused. You know, there's a new phrase spreading through the galaxy. I have heard it from half a dozen species already. What phrase? Stubborn as a human. The Admiral laughed. I think they mean it as a compliment. Jack allowed himself a small smile. Amy started the engines, and the Carolina Dawn lifted off from Desser Prime for the last time. Below them, the white towers of the capital grew smaller. Somewhere down there, a former emperor sat in disgrace, and a new order was beginning to take shape. They jumped to faster than light speed, and the stars became streaks of light. So, Amy said, settling into her chair, what now? Jack thought about his daughter. He thought about all the humans who had died so that this moment could happen. He thought about the future stretching out ahead, full of challenges and possibilities. Now, he said, we build something worth fighting for. The Carolina Dawn flew on through the darkness, carrying them home and across the galaxy on 1,000 different worlds. Beings of every species looked at humans a little differently than they had before. Not as animals or threats or problems to be solved, but as something to be respected. Something, stubborn. Something that would never, ever kneel.